Are patio heaters worth it? That's something you're probably wondering if you live in a cold climate, or you're like me and you live in California in a temperate climate, but you want to use your outdoor space for more of the year. So should you invest in a patio heater? And the question is, the answer really depends on, what kind of use you want to make of your yard, and also what type of heater you're going to be choosing. So if you have a relatively small yard, then certainly putting out some patio heaters can be an effective way to extend your ability to use that outdoor space into more of the year. If you live in an area that's very cold, there's going to be snow on the ground, or it's going to be 30 degrees for a lot of the winter, these heaters may not be powerful enough to make that space comfortable. But again, if you have a smaller yard and you live in a more temperate area, then certainly the heaters can be beneficial. Another thing to consider is, do you have one space in your yard where people tend to gather? For example, a table where people would be sitting outdoors. And if the answer is yes, then certainly you could put in a patio heater in order to heat that area and have a selectively heated area that people can sit during the winter months when it's chilly and be outdoors. If your yard is bigger and people tend to, run around and play sports or whatever, you're not going to be able to heat a large space with a standard patio heater. So consider if you have a little nook that you want to heat. Another important consideration from a safety standpoint is whether your yard is covered or uncovered. So if you have a covered deck, for example, or if you have a space that's semi-enclosed, then many of the patio heaters in the market are not going to be a fit because they need to be run in an area that is fully ventilated, fully open to the air. That's because they produce carbon monoxide, so if you use them in any kind of an enclosed space, that can be very hazardous. So certainly if you have an enclosed space in your yard, a covered porch or something where the sides are also covered, then a propane patio heater at least will not be a good option for you. When you're considering, though, you could also look at electric heaters for that kind of space. There's some good ones out there. They're usually mounted on a wall in that space facing downwards. They radiate heat out, and that's more appropriate for those kinds of covered patios and other spaces that might be enclosed. The more traditional heater, though, is what you see at the top of this article here. These are a variety of, it's a fire column heater. They're infrared heaters that use propane. You can also see the big heaters with a big sort of circular reflector at the top you often see in restaurants. All of those are propane heaters. Again, if you have a small space you're trying to heat, they can be great. Again, as long as your climate isn't super, super chilly, that can be a great option to get one of those. They're relatively inexpensive. Those models are generally between $50 and $300. You can get good ones for around $150. A couple brands I like are FireSense and also Sunjoy, and Amazon Basics makes a really good one that you can get on Amazon.com. So that's certainly an option. If you're going for an electric heater, you probably will have to have it installed by an electrician. That's going to be pricey, and so you can expect to invest several $100s and even more once you factor in the cost of labor there. So again, think about your yard, think about how people use it. If it's totally open, but you have some smaller areas like a table area or even a fire pit area that you want to heat more, the inexpensive propane heaters are probably going to be a good fit for you. Put a couple of them out and it can make your patio pretty comfortable, assuming your climate isn't so cold that there's snow on the ground that's icy. In that case, it's probably not going to work so well for you. If you do have a covered space, you're probably looking at an electric heater. Those work great, and they're much, there's no hazard of the carbon monoxide, but you will probably pay more to have an electrician install that in that space. And the final thing to think about is with the propane heaters, you will need to swap out the propane tanks in there. So most of these are reliant on portable propane tanks. It's usually a 20-gallon tank. In most cases, that will last 4 to 6 hours in the heater on a high setting. So you can expect to swap those tanks out fairly regularly if you're going to be heating your patio a lot, especially in those colder months. So those are some of the things to think about. Whether patio heaters are worth it really depends on your yard and the temperature of the climate that you live in, and whether your yard is configured in a way that there's small spaces you're able to heat. Also, again, safety perspective, totally enclosed versus open, that's going to really determine whether you can use a propane heater that tends to be less expensive, or if it's an enclosed space, you're going to probably have to invest in that more expensive electric heater.